I'm 23 years old with probably the best network of large business owners in the entire world, working with guys like Robert Kiyosaki, many billionaire business owners. Most of my friends that are in the space do hundreds of millions of dollars, if not billions of dollars per year with publicly traded companies. And I 100% truthfully say I would definitely have an edge over anyone because of the network I have. So how do young people actually network with older, wealthier people? The first step is providing astronomical amounts of value, but you have to put yourself in environments where these people are. And I'm going to show you an example of a potential client that I closed last week while I was at dinner. I work out and I spend most of my time in Scottsdale, and I work out in this right in Old Town. There's a gym right there that is very nice, called Lifetime. I think it's $300 per month for that gym. But afterwards, I walked to this nice steakhouse. I was in shorts, flip-flops, and a t-shirt at a very nice steakhouse called Mastro's. And I was just sitting at the bar. Right when I sat down, I ordered a ribeye and a salad. And I didn't even look at the menu. There was a guy sitting about two seats next to me. He was just sitting, drinking a beer, and watching the game. So first step, I just pulled out my laptop and started working like I normally do. But when I got my food, I just stirred up a conversation because he was watching the basketball game. I don't give a shit about basketball, but it was a college basketball team versus like a team in New Hampshire, and I'm from the Boston area. So I said, "Oh, who are you rooting for?" I know quite a few people that go to UConn, which was the college team that was playing. And we just start talking, and work always comes up. He's like, what the hell are you doing here? Because first off, every single person at this restaurant was dressed incredibly nicely. I had a t-shirt on, shorts, and flip-flops at a restaurant where almost everyone else was in a full suit. It is a very nice place, a few $100s per person, no matter what you're getting. But I mean, that is just, I just go to this place for dinner a few times a week. So it is pretty normal. And everywhere I go, I treat everyone super nicely. I always tip super, super, super well. And it gives you more of a, let's say, clout in these areas. But I just started talking to this guy, and I'm honestly never looking from anything for it. I'm never going into conversations with the intention of trying to get anything out of it. I'm just always trying to see and interested in other people's lives. So we start talking, and I just ask about his family, what he's doing here in Scottsdale, if he enjoys living here. We just are small talking. I am probably the worst person in the world with talking to people my own age. If my girlfriend's watching this, she's going to say, "There's no way you did this, Josh," because I'm incredibly socially awkward, and I am in 99% of the cases with anyone under the age of 30. But if someone's over the age of 50, it is just my wheelhouse. I don't know why, but I feel so comfortable talking to people that are older. I'm asking him about his kids who are about 30 years old. He lived in Tucson because he had an insurance company, and they were growing it out of Tucson, but has since moved to the Scottsdale area, in a very nice area. And we just start talking. He's a partner in the insurance firm, and they have about 130 employees. They do 9 figures per year, but it's just slowly getting into it. And I'm always just asking him questions, and kind of anytime he asks me a question, I'm not gloating to want to talk about myself, to say, "Oh my God, guess how much money we're doing," which I see a lot of young people do. They're obsessed with themselves when no one gives a fuck about you. Genuinely, no one cares about you. And if all you're doing is talking about yourself, no one cares, I promise you. And I don't like talking about myself either. So I just kept on asking him more and more questions. Like, okay, so how do you source lead gen for your company? Okay, is it cold calling? How are you doing that? What acquisitions channels do you have? What's your LTV? Once you get someone into the door, how long does your average customer last? So I'm asking him quasi high end questions like what multiples do insurance companies sell for if you were going to? What's the plan with the company over the next 10 years? And so I'm asking him pretty in-depth questions that you would have to have a business or be pretty business oriented to understand. Business is my favorite sport in the entire world. I love to know what the cost to acquire customers are, what the LTV is of their customers, how they bring them in the door, how they incentivize them. I'm in a completely different niche, but I still find it fun. And they just start talking. And eventually he's like, "Dude," because when he asked me what I did, I said, "Oh, I'm in marketing." He was like, "You got to tell me, what the fuck do you do?" And I just said, "Well, I have a marketing company doing the organic media for large businesses." And then I just reflected and asked him another question about their acquisition channels. I was never, I was making him push to see and get a glimpse into what we do, because I wasn't just going to tell him. I've just kept it broad and vague and mysterious, you could say. And eventually he froze me and said, all right, Josh, who are some businesses that I might know? And I started naming someone well, here in Arizona, we work with a guy named Robert Kiyosaki. And he took a sip of his beer and he said, what the fuck? How do I know that person? He said, I know that person, but I don't know how. I said, who wrote their book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad? He said, that was my favorite book growing up, and it really helped me in the space. I said, I work with another guy who he has about 10,000 apartment units here in Arizona. And I told him the company. They had not heard of it, but they heard of a lot of companies that work with this company. He's like, how the fuck do you work with these guys? And so I just started telling him more of the story of, well, I got into the space by apprenticing myself under someone, dropping out of high school, getting his logo tattooed on my leg, flying across the country and working for this guy, and then figuring out all the marketing and social media and everything else afterwards. And we were just having a very good conversation. And at the end, it was not work related. I just said, hey, I hope you have an excellent rest of your night. I hope everything goes well. And I'm sure I'll see you around here at some point. And he just sends me a text the other day and said, hey, Josh, we met at Mastro's last night. Would like to buy you lunch and bring 2 of my partners along. We are located in the Chandler area. I'm not going to tell you the name of the group that they have, but can meet in Scottsdale if you have any times or dates. So all I did is text, and we are going to be getting lunch December 3rd. So things like this, what are the high level principles of the networking that I'm giving you? First off, it is ask about other people and provide value. I was trying to think through ways for them to lower their cost to acquire customers, or increase their LTV, or reduce friction between closing those customers. And because I have so much experience in the space, it is easy for me to point out these types of flaws. I love the process of acquiring customers. I absolutely geek over it, on how to stretch out LTV into the future. And that stuff literally makes me so excited to talk about. And so it's very clear that I know what I'm talking about when I'm doing that, because I actually know what I'm doing, because I've done it so many times for so many different businesses, along with our own. And towards the end, he was asking, well, how big's your team? I said, we're pretty small right now, but we're growing quite rapidly. And he was like, okay, well, how many people? And I said, well, right now we have 25 full-time people. And he just stops and he's like, what the fuck? He's like, how the hell are you 23 years old with 25 full-time people and doing all these things and working with all these big names? But if I led with trying to show him, let's say, how awesome I was, and if I was obsessed with myself, none of this would have happened. I guarantee you. Being obsessed with yourself gets you nowhere. Being obsessed with other people's problems and trying to help gets you everywhere. I have made my entire career by compounding goodwill and providing so many people so much value and never asking for a single thing in return. It has all been paid back forward with time spent and referrals and the network effect of having so much predecessed goodwill that has just been compounding to where now there's so many people that want to work with us, because we work with so many people in the top of the space, because we provided so much value for so long without ever asking anything. And now that's led to a company that's able to compound. So the first step of networking is putting yourself in a position to get lucky. If you never put yourself in a position where higher end people are, it is very unlikely that you will ever expand your network with wealthier people, period. That could be working at a nicer place. Let's say working at a country club if you're younger, to where you can start to meet some of these people. Working at a super high-end restaurant. If you are the bartender at Mastro's, you are going to hear very interesting conversations. If you go to the bar at these super nice places, and every single city has places like this. And so here's our travel schedule for the next few months. Right now I'm in Boston for the family, going back to Scottsdale, then going to LA and Beverly Hills area to meet with a client and potentially close a few more clients, then going back to Scottsdale where we have constant meetings, then going from Scottsdale to New York where we will be guaranteed in some very interesting conversations and meet some very interesting people, then going back to Boston, then going to Columbia, then going to Miami, then going to Scottsdale. And that's just over the next month and a half of constant travels. But if you know, if wealthy people go to the same types of areas everywhere. And so in Scottsdale, it's places like the Mastro Bar, Hillstones or Houston's. I couldn't tell you how many wealthy people I've met at those areas, at the Lifetimes or super high-end gyms, at the kind of hip places like the Global Ambassador. There are just certain areas where your ICP go in your area. And depending on your business, if you are there, you can put yourself in a position to get lucky. I'm not saying it will happen, but you are putting yourself in a position of higher probability of meeting those types of people. Then there's networking events. Almost every single client I've closed has been from conferences, always going to the super high-end conferences where usually buying the VIP ticket gets you in the room with the highest end people, period. It just does. And paying sometimes is a speedboat to get to the position where you want to be. But it's still not going to those things thinking, how can I close as many clients as possible? It's always, how can I provide as much value? And then sometimes it's not an instant return on investment. Sometimes it is years down the line of goodwill, but always just going with trying to help other people first makes it a lot easier. For example, on Friday, I had a very busy day. I had a meeting with a guy that has an AI SaaS company pretty similar to the one that we do, that we just created. And I'm trying to see if there's any synergy for us to refer clients, because we do similar things, but in very different niches. And they do awesome work. We're doing awesome work. They have about 120 employees. And then I had a meeting with the team. Then I had a meeting with a guy that is a mentor, where I'm doing a once a month meeting where I was showing him our entire org chart, how we're structuring, how we're acquiring customers, for how we have a negative cost to acquire customers. So we get paid thousands of dollars to acquire customers where everyone else has an expense, but it's because we found out unique ways to acquire customers and get paid to do so. I geek out over that stuff, how we are increasing LTV, how we are improving our hiring process. I was really trying to ask him how we should improve our org chart. And so you manage a business in silos where people have to report to people. How many direct reports should someone have? Because one person can't have 25 people that is directly reporting to them, especially if it's every single day. There is a mathematical equation that make it better. And so he does $500 million per year. This year, or at least that was last year. This year, they added $65 million and $15 million in profit. So they're doing about $215 million in profit. And he really is helping as a mentor, 100%. He's also a client, but I would consider more of a mentor than a client. Then I went to another client's house who he has a 10,000 unit real estate portfolio. I went there with the School of Hard Knocks kids, the kids that go around asking millionaires and billionaires what they do for a living. And then I got dinner with those kids. There's 3 partners and then one other guy, and I was showing them our org chart because they're building out an agency similar to the one that we have, a very similar marketing agency. Our wheelhouse is a little bit different than theirs, but I was showing them the problems that we've solved because we're actually at a pretty similar size in terms of agencies. We're a little bit bigger, but they have so much more distribution. They have other cash flow areas. In total revenue, they do make more money. But in terms of the agency, we operate a lot better. And so I was just giving them a ton of sauce, a ridiculous amount of sauce with no expectations in return, nor do I want anything from them. I was just genuinely excited to talk about the things because I knew it would help them, because it took us 3+ years to really get our marketing agency to where it is today. And I knew that what I showed them would be able to allow them to scale way quicker and way less frictionful. And so things like that was just an average day on Friday. So things like that keep you super busy and keep the mind refreshed. And if I always just went everywhere trying to take, you would never get these types of opportunities. People would not want to help you. And it's simple, but I can't tell you how many people I see are only in relationships because they are trying to take something from someone else. They are always looking what their angle is, how they can get something out of a relationship. And I've never once seen that parasitical type relationship really work. Compare that to someone that I would consider a friend and a mentor, one of my clients. Every single time he picks up the phone, it's, what can I do for you? He's always pushing goodwill. And he does that because he wants to help people. I want to help people. It feels good to help people, but you also get rewarded for it. It is 100%. I've never seen a situation where it backfires, even though you could say that's a competitor. Like the School of Hard Knocks guy, the agency that they are creating, they are a quasi-competitor to what we were doing. I'm completely fine with that. There's enough, when you realize how much money there is out there, there is infinite ways for every single person to win, 100% of the time. And most people are so small-minded that they never see that, and that leads to a lot of static growth. So how do you improve your network? Go into relationships thinking how you can improve other people's lives, and I guarantee you it will improve everything. And then putting yourselves in positions to get lucky, and then being shameless. People would call me incredibly cringy for some of the things that I've done. I have begged my way into dinners. I mean, you couldn't even fucking believe it. I have literally begged my way into some of the most badass dinners. But I know the position I'm in. I'm the retard kid. When I was 19 years old, I had nothing of value to bring, but I was going to dinner with billionaires because I would just say, what do I have to do to go to this dinner? And I'll give you another example. I was at an event, one of my clients, George Gaiman, the one that I originally started working for, where I got his logo tattooed on my leg. That's how I got the job. He already had the network. And he was going to a dinner with some business colleagues of his, who all of these people are now clients of mine. He was going to dinner with Robert Kiyosaki, Ken McElroy, and a few other people. And George said that he was going to dinner and he'd see me later. I'm like, fuck, I gotta go to this dinner. I knew that George wouldn't care, but he didn't plan the dinner. So I went and found Ken McElroy, who's just a super friendly person. I said, hey, I think dinner's in 30 minutes. Do you want me to call the Uber? And I was just going to sneak in and I was going to go in with Ken. And Ken said, absolutely. He said, let's go in together. Let me get Kiyosaki and us three will drive in. So I called the Uber. It was me, Ken, and Kiyosaki driving into dinner. And guess what? We get to the table first. I go up and talk to the hostess and say, hey, I think it's the dinner reservations for 6. We're going to have 7. And she's like, okay, sure. And I sit down. George sees me. He doesn't give a fuck. What you don't realize is these older, wealthier people respect and love the hustle. And you know what I did at the end of the dinner? I told them what I did, and they thought that it was awesome. They were cracking up laughing, and they actually condoned me. They said, Josh, great work. Way to put yourself in a position to do this. Because sometimes you just have to think of smarter or more interesting solutions. Just because someone, as fucked up as it is, just because you don't get invited doesn't mean you can't go. And if I went there and I was just trying to milk everything, I wouldn't be invited back. But because I'm actually interested in how many people are actually listening to someone's conversation, I'm hyper interested in these conversations, and I'm asking intelligent follow-up questions because I'm genuinely curious. And that leads to every single person having a good discussion. And that is why I'm constantly invited back and introduced to more and more of these cool people. And then you get introduced to more things. And all of this just compounds over time, as long as you are not a leech. And if I went into every single one of those situations trying to take something, I would never be invited back. And I would not be in 1/100th of the situation I'm in today, would not have 1/100th of the opportunities that I have today or the business that we have today. And I genuinely think having this big of a network is one of, if not the biggest reason why we are where we are today, why we have such a low cost to acquire customers. In fact, such a negative cost to acquire a customer, and why we are able to scale as quickly as we are. But it just took 4 years to build. And now that compounds even more. Networking is not the all and be all. It will not save your life. If a network alone is not going to make you wealthy, you still have to do it yourself. But it is like putting a turbo speedboat or a turbo engine in a Bugatti, where a Bugatti that has a Ford engine but can only tap out at 50 miles an hour, the network propels you way quicker with a much better engine.